There are 13 states where three financial forces are colliding right now, and if you own property in any of them, what I'm about to show you using November 2025 foreclosure data could be the most important information you see all year. Hey everyone, Daniel Carter here. I'm a real estate market analyst focused on housing economics, foreclosure trends, and state-level fiscal dynamics. Today we need to talk about something that's hiding in plain sight. Foreclosures across the United States jumped 20% year over year recently. Home values are softening nationally. And yet, if you walk into most real estate offices, you're still being told it's a great time to buy. We're not going to tell you that today. Instead, we're going to identify 13 specific states where housing stress is at crisis levels, where three dangerous forces are converging simultaneously, creating conditions that historically lead to market corrections. If you own property in any of these states, you need to understand what's happening. All right, let's start with the national picture because it sets the context for everything else. The Case-Shiller Index, one of the most trusted measures of home price movement in the country, is showing barely 1.5% annual gains and losing momentum every quarter. Foreclosure activity is accelerating. And critically, this is happening during what is technically still an economic expansion. When housing stress shows up before a recession has even officially begun, that's a warning sign. Because historically, when the economy does eventually turn, that's when housing problems accelerate dramatically. Now, let me walk you through the 13 states where conditions are most concerning, and I'm going to explain exactly why each one is vulnerable. Florida is not heading toward a housing crisis. It's already in one. As of recent data, Florida records one foreclosure filing for every 1,829 housing units, the worst rate in the entire country. In a single month, over 5,500 Florida homes entered the foreclosure process. And this isn't concentrated in a few distressed neighborhoods. Major markets across the state, Miami, Cape Coral, Sarasota, Fort Lauderdale, are showing simultaneous stress. Homes in Miami are sitting on the market for an average of 69 days, the longest wait time of any major metro in the nation. Inventory in Cape Coral has surged 51% year over year. Sarasota is up 48%, Fort Lauderdale 30%. When listings pile up that fast while days on market stretch longer, it means buyers have stepped back. And when buyers step back in a market with elevated foreclosures, prices don't stabilize, they fall. The reason buyers are stepping back isn't purely about mortgage rates, it's insurance. The average Florida homeowner now pays more than $11,000 per year for property insurance compared to a national average of roughly $2,500. That's a 340% gap. Climate risk has been repriced into the Florida market, and it's forcing longtime homeowners to sell whether they want to or not. For many families, carrying a Florida home has simply become financially impossible regardless of what their mortgage payment looks like. Meanwhile, population growth, the fuel that powered Florida's boom, is collapsing. Domestic migration into the state dropped from over 222,000 new residents in 2022 to barely 68,000 in 2024. That's not a slowdown. That's a demand collapse, and the market is just beginning to price it in. Colorado was supposed to be one of the safe markets. Strong tech sector, educated workforce, beautiful geography. Then the data came out. Colorado recorded a 145% year-over-year increase in foreclosure filings, the largest surge of any state in the country. Foreclosures more than doubled in a state that analysts were calling stable 18 months ago. At the same time, the state government swung from a budget surplus to a $750 million shortfall in less than a fiscal year. Office vacancy rates in Denver remain elevated. Pandemic-era remote workers who relocated to Colorado are now being called back to offices in other cities. And housing inventory has climbed above pre-pandemic levels, meaning supply is back, but the demand that justified it isn't. The lesson from Colorado is critical. The most dangerous housing corrections often happen in markets that looked perfectly fine right up until the moment they didn't. Illinois is what happens when a state ignores structural financial problems for decades. The state carries $144 billion in unfunded pension obligations, with pension funding sitting at just 46%. Total liabilities have swelled to nearly $250 billion. The debt ratio relative to the economy is 468%, the highest of any state. These aren't theoretical concerns. They are permanent anchors dragging on every government service and every potential housing relief program the state could otherwise fund. Illinois lost more than 56,000 residents to domestic migration recently. As the population shrinks, the tax base shrinks. As the tax base shrinks, the state must either raise taxes on those remaining, which drives more people out, or cut services. There is no good option. When economic conditions shift, Illinois has no capacity to cushion the blow for homeowners. The correction, when it comes, will be sharp. South Carolina holds the second highest foreclosure rate in the country, with one foreclosure for every 1,982 housing units. More than 1,000 foreclosure filings in a single reporting period. And the distress is showing up simultaneously in multiple counties across the state. When that many different regions show housing stress at the same time, you're not looking at local problems. You're looking at systemic failure. South Carolina's economy is built primarily around manufacturing and tourism, two sectors that historically absorb the heaviest blows during recessions. There's limited diversification to act as a buffer. The foreclosure pattern already visible isn't a preview of what might happen. It's the first chapter of what's already underway. California faces a $58 billion budget deficit, nearly $500 billion in total liabilities, and the largest net population outflow of any state at nearly 240,000 residents in a single year. Active home listings have surged dramatically, with some counties seeing inventory double. The average home is sitting on the market 41% longer than a year ago. California's unemployment rate has climbed to 5.5%, second highest in the country. Nearly 800 companies relocated out of California over a recent period, including Fortune 500 headquarters. Every company that leaves takes jobs, salaries, and tax revenue with it. The feedback loop between population loss, business departure, shrinking tax base, and rising housing inventory is already in motion. Delaware recorded the highest business bankruptcy rate in the country, with more than 1,200 filings. Over 1% of all businesses in the state entered bankruptcy in a single year. That kind of business-level stress eventually becomes household-level stress. Unemployment has risen, and housing foreclosures are tracking higher alongside it. Delaware's greatest vulnerability is its size. Small states don't have the economic scale to absorb regional shocks. And Delaware sits adjacent to Pennsylvania, Maryland, and New Jersey, states with their own housing and fiscal problems. When neighboring economies weaken, that pressure doesn't stop at the state line. Nevada posted the highest annual unemployment rate in the country at 5.6%. In Reno, home values have declined roughly 3.6%. In Las Vegas, prices have slipped about 0.5%. The structural problem is Nevada's dependence on tourism and hospitality, industries that are essentially luxuries. When Americans tighten their budgets, Las Vegas trips and casino visits are among the first things cut. Nevada's economic engine runs on discretionary spending, and discretionary spending is the first casualty of a recession. Texas oversupplied its housing market, and the bill is coming due. Active home listings have reached approximately 123,000, roughly 53% above normal inventory levels. The state issued 15% of all new home permits nationwide during the building boom, continuing to add supply even as migration slowed dramatically. Net domestic migration into Texas dropped 62% from pandemic highs. Austin has become the clearest example of the overbuilding trap. Home prices in Austin are now projected to decline by over 12%, a correction driven almost entirely by the mismatch between supply that was built and demand that didn't materialize. New York's crisis begins in commercial real estate and radiates outward. Manhattan office vacancy rates are hovering between 17 and 20%. The state is carrying roughly $368 billion in total debt and running a $34 billion structural deficit. More than 120,000 residents left in a single year. An estimated $13.7 billion in personal income relocated to Florida alone. When commercial real estate weakens, it travels. Banks absorb losses. Municipal tax revenue falls. The residential market loses economic oxygen. New Jersey carries approximately $92 billion in unfunded pension liabilities, roughly $9,700 per resident. It also has the highest property taxes in the nation. Despite recent home price gains, foreclosure filings are increasing at the same time. That contradiction, rising prices and rising foreclosures simultaneously, is one of the clearest signals of underlying financial stress. It means price gains are not translating into financial stability for actual homeowners. Connecticut carries the highest per capita liability burden in the country at over $27,000 per resident, with approximately $37 billion in unfunded pension obligations. The state lost about 21,000 residents recently. Its population is aging, meaning the ratio of working taxpayers to retirees continues to shift in the wrong direction. Connecticut's housing crisis will look quieter than Florida's, a steady erosion of demand, liquidity, and long-term value as demographics and debt work against the market year after year. Arizona corrected a $1.4 billion budget deficit, but left zero fiscal cushion behind. Housing affordability deteriorated dramatically, transitioning Arizona from one of the more affordable states to one of the least affordable in the region. In Tucson, home prices have already dropped over 2%. Arizona enters a potential recession with minimal financial flexibility and a housing market already in correction mode. Oregon recorded the sharpest unemployment increase of any state during what is technically still an expansion period, nearly 0.9 percentage points. When unemployment climbs that fast without a recession as a trigger, it points to underlying structural weakness that will amplify significantly when a downturn officially arrives. Portland's commercial real estate market remains under pressure. Remote work patterns are reducing the economic vitality of Oregon's urban cores. Foreclosure activity is already up 20% year over year, while price growth slides toward negative territory. If you live in any of these 13 states, here are 3 things you should be tracking. First, watch monthly foreclosure filings in your specific county. National numbers provide context, but the data that directly affects your home's value is hyperlocal. Rising foreclosures in your county signal rising distressed inventory, which pulls prices down for everyone nearby. Second, track active listing inventory month over month. When listings accumulate faster than they're being absorbed by buyers, it's a leading indicator of price pressure. You don't need to wait for price data to confirm a trend. Inventory tells you what's coming before it arrives. Third, know your state's fiscal position. States with strong reserves and balanced budgets can step in with relief programs when housing markets crack. States drowning in pension debt and running structural deficits cannot. Here's the hard truth. What we're discussing is not a forecast for 2027 or 2028. This is data documenting conditions that already exist today. Foreclosures are already accelerating. Prices are already softening in key markets. Inventory is already surging in states that were booming just 2 or 3 years ago. The 3 triggers: rising foreclosures during expansion, declining prices paired with increasing distress, and state governments with no room to intervene, are already active across these 13 states simultaneously. Some of these situations will resolve slowly over years. Others could crack quickly once a recession officially arrives. The most important thing you can take from this is clarity. Know which state you're in. Know what the data actually says about your local market. And make decisions based on real numbers, not reassurances. The 2008 crisis hurt millions of families who were never warned. This time, the warning signs are right in front of us. The question is whether people are paying attention. That's the breakdown of the 13 states facing the most severe housing market stress and what the data is telling us. Thanks for watching. If you found this analysis helpful, let me know in the comments. Tell me what state you're in and what you're seeing on the ground in your local market. And if you want more content breaking down housing market risks, foreclosure trends, and state-level economic dynamics with no hype and no fear-mongering, just data and analysis, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you in the next one.